Hafaday, and welcome to a new episode of My Story. I'm your host, Janella Carrera. We're going to be doing something a little different for our last episode of the year. We're going to have one guest featured into 2 episodes. That's right, our interview with our next guest was filled with so much information that we decided to break it up into 2 episodes. So when we come back, Retta Sue Hamilton will share with us her breast cancer survival story and the unconventional methods she used to heal herself. Hafaday, and welcome back to My Story. Again, I'm your host, Janella Carrera. And like I mentioned, today's guest is Miss Retta Sue Hamilton. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me here.
And you are a breast cancer survivor.
Yes, as of April this year.
This year?
Yes.
Wow, wonderful. Okay, so we kind of want to get to know a little bit about you. Tell us about yourself. You know, what were you doing before any of this? What was life like? You know, you're from Guam, so tell us about that.
What was I doing before any of this? I was just really working my butt off.
Just living a normal life.
Living a normal life like everybody else, eating like everybody else, engaging in social activities just like everybody else.
Married, kids?
I did have a partner at that time. No children, but I do have 3 dogs that I rescued.
Oh, they're your children?
Yes, they're my kids, and they keep me grounded and still here. But yeah, I was just doing all that stuff, and nothing really out of the ordinary.
Right. Yeah.
But I did kind of pursue. I was interested actually more in like gardening for some reason.
Oh.
Yes, at that time it was really weird, and I started transitioning out of the retail industry and into a lot of public health programs.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
yeah. So
like agricultural type of stuff?
yes, like and it was the onset. The purpose of that was I had high cholesterol at that time.
Oh,
so I said, and I just don't like taking medication anyway. So I just said, I made a deal with my doctor that I was gonna change my lifestyle. And that's really kind of how it all started. But other than that, everything else was normal.
And this was what, maybe 4 or 5 years ago?
2013, yeah, 5 years ago.
5 years ago when the high cholesterol came
Yes, high
about.
cholesterol. And I had 1 year, and we just did a lot of blood work, and then I was all clear.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
And no medication?
No medications.
So you already have a history of,
just no
defying
medication
odds.
thing, yeah. I know. But yeah, if I were to really think back, that's about the only transition that I made. Yes.
I see. Okay, so no cholesterol. You became cholesterol free after a year of just kind of natural herbal type of.
I stopped eating a lot of fried foods. I cut back on a lot of fried foods.
Sugars.
Alcohol. Yes, definitely. Alcohol is a lot of sugar. And what you mix in it at that time has a lot of sugar. Now I just have a glass of wine here and there, just really whatever.
Wine is actually, a lot of people say is good for you.
It
it's
is
good for your heart.
A glass is good, but not a bottle.
Right.
And, so we laugh about that all the time.
Not a bottle at one time.
No, but sometimes it turns into a bottle.
Just depends on the occasion, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you kind of have this experience with, treating yourself in a more healthy, holistic way, right? And then tell us about, I guess we'll kind of segue into you getting your mammogram, which is what women are supposed to be doing, right? That's what they tell us. They teach us that to get your mammogram as soon as you turn 40, get it on like an annual basis. So you did that. Tell us about that experience.
That's funny because I was 41 when I had my first mammogram, and I was late. Because I had been engulfed in so much work with public health, I was cognizant and aware of, these screening dates and all that sort of stuff. So 41 years old, I decided to finally schedule an appointment. There was a program that was available to all women for screening. It was a free breast and cervical cancer screening program.
Oh, okay.
And at that time, at the job I had back then, we didn't have any medical benefits. But so I felt the pressure that I needed to do it because my grandmother passed away from breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And 2 of her siblings did as well.
Wow.
You know, so, and then I have some aunts that passed away from breast cancer.
So you knew that there was a somewhat of a history in
yeah,
your
so
family.
based on that, you know, and it started to make me nervous.
Right,
You know, so
right.
I actually scheduled that appointment, and that was in December, on December 4th of 2014.
And thank God it was a free one, right? Because as
Yes.
you mentioned, you didn't have health insurance.
I
at the time.
didn't, but I'm very grateful, and it's a grant-funded program.
Through public health.
Through the Department of Public Health and
Wow,
Social Services.
that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So proof right there that, you know, these free grants, these grants to help women like yourself who didn't have health insurance does really work.
It helps,
it really
yes,
helps.
it helped, yeah.
So you went in for your mammogram. What happened? And this was your very first one.
This is my first experience.
Wow.
And I've heard horror stories about it. My maternal grandmother never actually recommended that we should get mammograms, and I never had an opportunity to speak with her.
This is the one who had cancer, breast cancer.
So I never had an opportunity to ask her why. So she passed away. And I was in Hawaii at that time, and I said goodbye to her over the phone, and I just moved to Hawaii. So anyhow, so all the years passed, and I remember thinking, why did grandma, and I trusted her. So I was like, how come she didn't recommend it? You know, and then my mom started to say, oh, you know, because they really get in there and really squish your breasts down to pieces, and she felt that somehow it activated, you know, the cancer, doing that procedure. So I was like, well, that kind of makes sense, you know, but I never really looked too much into it. So I still did it. And
But your grandmother never had,
she's the one that passed away from breast cancer.
but she never had a mammogram done.
I think she did.
Okay.
I believe she did, and that's probably her reason of
I
not
see.
for not.
It was not a very pleasant experience.
Yes,
of
I
course.
believe so. Sometimes I'm just like, can you just answer me or guide me or something? But so that happened, and then they said I needed to come back, and I said, for what?
Yeah.
You know, I was like, what do I need to come back for?
So you got the mammogram done, and when did they tell you? You know, was it like a day later, a couple days
a
later?
week later.
A week later.
They're
okay.
like, oh, you know, we noticed something in your
We found something there, yeah.
in your X-ray, and we need you to come back for an ultrasound.
What were you thinking at that
I
time?
was like, what did you find? I started to feel my breasts, you know, like, what did you find? Like, which breast?
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. I started to I said, okay, I'll come in, but I was very nervous. And it's, and I have photos actually of that visit. If there's something that I really enjoyed doing, it's documenting stuff. My phone's glued to my hand at all times. So I'm grateful.
A lot of us are now.
I'm grateful that I had my phone with me, and I was able to take photos of everything, literally.
During the mammogram?
Yeah, like every time they stepped away, I would like take a picture of something, you know,
wow.
and then I would go home and analyze
And
stuff.
look at it, yeah.
Yes, so anyhow, so.
It's like a Dr. Google type of thing.
Yes, so it's, so they did the ultrasound, and then I said, what is it for? They said, oh, you know, we believe we saw something in your right breast. And I said, okay. I go, what did you see? They go, I don't know, that's why we have to do this. I said, okay. And so at the end, I was just anxious, always calling and following up, like, what's the final result of that ultrasound? And then they're like, oh, you know, it's nothing. We rule it as folded tissue. Like somehow folded tissue in my breast. They're saying that my breast was kind of overlapping each other.
This was folded tissue that they found from the mammogram or from the ultrasound? From the ultrasound.
From the ultrasound, from both when they were analyzing. And I have that photo, you know, so I'm like,
So you're looking at it.
I'm looking at it, I'm like,
where's
there
the folded part?
Yes, yeah. So I didn't ask any questions. They're like, come back in a year again for your next mammogram. So I said, okay, and I just left. But 10 months later,
That was in
December 2014.
2014. Okay, now
And then
fast
10 months
forward.
later, I felt a lump in my breast, like a little marble, you know, size. I mean, it was
Like you were
obvious.
doing like a self-check type of.
Yes, yeah. Well, because, you know, I was just like, what's this? And I remember I was like feeling, and then I started pushing, and
Was it painful?
no, it wasn't painful at
It
all.
was just like this weird piece of lump that's in there.
An obvious ball.
An obvious ball.
Yes.
Oh wow.
It was like maybe the size of a jawbreaker.
Oh wow.
Or a gumball at that time.
Meaning obvious in terms of you looking at it or you feeling it?
Me feeling it.
Feeling it. Okay.
And so I was on video chat with my sisters, and when I felt it, And they said, "Oh, Retta, that's nothing. I get lumps all the time in my breast."
Yeah, there are. I've had a similar experience, but in my lymph nodes.
Yes.
And later it was just they just determined it was just a swollen node. It'll go away on its own. So I mean, yes, there are times when women feel something, but you can't really tell if it's
Cancerous or not.
or not.
Yeah. So, but I already knew, like for
Because
some
it was
reason,
the same area
Yes.
where they found the fold just 10 months earlier. What were you thinking at that time?
This is not just a lump because it's that time of the month, or because it's a full moon,
Or 'cause
or
you're
whatever
sick
reason,
or
or
whatever.
yes,
Right,
it's
right.
I knew, I kind of felt it.
Yeah, and you were putting two and two together. A fold 10 months earlier, now a jawbreaker size lump.
Yes, and so then I immediately called my colleague at the free breast and cervical cancer screening program. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel a lump in my breast, and by that time I already developed a relationship, with the public health staff, because we do a lot of work together.
Right.
And I was like, I need to get in, I need to be seen, and they looked at my record and they told me that I had to wait till December. I go, but this
This
is
was in October, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're like, you need to wait one whole year. Unfortunately, the grant requirement required that you had to wait one whole year until you're seen again. So.
And you still didn't have health insurance at the
Yes,
time.
I didn't have it at the time. Really, it was just a waiting game, and I just started to do my research, and that's when I started pulling out photos and lab work, and then I came across communication that I had with them, like, hey, this is an obvious lump. So what other option do I have? Where can I go to be seen so I don't have to wait? But by that time, December rolled around. The days flew by, and then all my appointments were scheduled in December
I
of
see.
20.
So it went by pretty quickly.
Yeah, for some reason, it just
Having to wait from October to
yeah, it went by fast.
Plus you have the holidays, so you're kind of
Correct.
preoccupied.
But
and all
I
of
mean,
that.
everything happened like in December. The ultrasound, the biopsy,
All of that, all in December. Okay.
like
all
a
right.
week and a half apart from each other.
Okay. We'll
And
take-
then I was diagnosed in January 2016.
So you received the diagnosis January 2016. The results came back
Yes.
that you did in fact have a tumor, breast cancer.
Correct. That was crazy.
Yeah, gosh, I can imagine, receiving that kind of news.
It was crazy. I failed to mention that my employer at that time, I was working 2 jobs. They did try to get me insurance through the Guam Chamber of Commerce because they were members. And I was a full-time staff with them at that time, but unfortunately
It just didn't.
it didn't go through. So my quest to seek actual insurance was just a learning curve on its own. So
But when you got the results in January, this was still through the public health program.
yes, but it
Right.
ended at screening.
I see.
So then I was like,
So then you were kind of back to now. What do I do?
how am I going to pay for
All
the
of
next
this.
steps?
Right,
Yeah, so
right.
it's weird. Simultaneous things started to happen. My mom started to fundraise for me.
okay.
She had fundraising dinners because I told her I didn't want it at a bar, especially for a medical fundraiser. That was my personal preference. I go, I don't want people partying, or
Getting
getting
drunk
drunk,
and- right, yeah.
for at my, while they're supporting me, and they're like, Retta, you're so boring, because I really, but anyhow, that's what happened, and it actually helped
Oh, okay. Good.
tremendously.
Wow.
So, and she didn't have one; she had several.
Wow.
My mom
Wow.
did.
Your
so
mom's
people-
amazing.
Yeah, my mom is actually very amazing, and I didn't know at the time how amazing what she did was, because I was upset that she exposed me, to like everybody. All of a sudden, everybody knew I had cancer,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
just couldn't deal with that. I just didn't want to deal with that. I'm a very social person, and then all of a sudden I have cancer. So then, like, what happens? And you just have this overpouring of support and care and genuine everything, but it was overwhelming.
Yeah, and that's another side of cancer, and and any illness that a person might have, is that you know, there is a risk of depression.
Oh, I've been there.
You
I was
know?
actually, I mean, I speak openly about it.
Mm.
It's very hard. I mean, it's interesting that I'm having this interview with you right now because in just leaving my recent job, I've had a lot of time to reflect, and depression is real.
Yes.
And I even spoke, because I'm part of a quality of life and survivorship member of the Guam Comprehensive Cancer Control Program. I mentioned that anyhow, I'm jumping here, but that people who have decided to go, this alternative route also still need
Yes,
help.
they still need help,
We need
yeah.
help. We really do. And I don't, because, we're raised to be strong and resilient.
Right.
And that actually gets us through a lot of stuff.
Right, right.
We're raised to not really depend on anybody.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's really tiring, and it's like, like I'm tired.
Yeah, you're right. That's the other side of getting a cancer diagnosis is, people have emotions. They have to process all of this, their thoughts and fears they may have, and even their family, their
Everything.
families go through it as well.
Yeah, my relationship failed, and cancer does change people, but I just kept plugging forward, moving forward, and there were a lot of things that I learned and how to deal with emotions and all that stuff. Because everybody's like, wow, you're so positive and happy, and I'm like,
You don't know what I went through to get here.
Yes, I'm just like, because I have to be here at this level.
Yeah.
I cannot be at any level other than positive and happy.
You don't have a choice, yeah.
There's a reason why I'm very positive and happy. It's a note to myself. It's a reinforcer for me.
I'm really glad to hear that. So your mom fundraised for you, and that's the money that you use to get your treatment done.
Actually, I was able to apply for MIP.
Oh, okay.
And so because I was gainfully employed, I was approved with a 30% copay. So that money did help.
So that meant money paid for the whatever the MIP didn't cover.
Correct, but guess what? It takes 2 years for MIP to be paid.
Oh.
So now I'm receiving all these bills from GRMC, from GMH, from
wow.
MRX Imaging, from Guam Radiology, with my 30% copay
Oh, wow.
right now.
Now, because
Yes.
it's been 2 years.
Yeah, I called them. I said,
wow.
why are you just sending this to me now? I said, why did you collect from me then?
Right.
So, like in my head, I was like, I had the money then. Why are you just sending this to me now? So that's something I'm dealing with right now. But yes,
That's the other side, the finances. Yeah.
Yes, it's
Emotions,
crazy.
the actual diagnosis, the finances. Yeah, it's.
I just called them literally.
I've never
week.
experienced it, but I've talked to so many of, cancer survivors and warriors, and that's another aspect of it.
It's a
that's
big aspect
very
of it.
difficult to
Yes,
deal
yes.
with. Yeah. So you had the tumor surgically removed.
Correct.
And I can imagine they probably recommended further treatment just to ensure that, perhaps if there's any leftover, or just to be sure that it's cleared.
Correct. Well, the cancer did metastasize to my lymph node, to my axillary lymph nodes. You start to kind of learn to
You
speak
know
the
the language.
language, So anyway, it did metastasize. It metastasized to 1 out of 5 lymph nodes that were removed. And,
So they removed some lymph nodes.
yes,
as
so this is
well.
a learning curve again in itself. I'm learning about lymph nodes.
So it metastasized before the surgical procedure.
When they removed, I had a complete radical mastectomy, and then lymph nodes were removed in that process.
See. Okay.
And so I did ask
So
recently.
they found it during the surgical procedure that it
Correct.
had spread. Okay.
I actually took a picture of the mastectomy, but anyway, so
How's that? You weren't knocked out?
It's a long story,
Okay.
but anyhow, I have a picture. Okay, I didn't
Okay.
take it, but yeah, all that happened, and yeah, Dr. Cruz, he's an awesome surgeon. I liked how he was very thorough and informative. The one thing I didn't know though is that reconstructive surgery is covered for breast cancer patients.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so I was really shocked when he asked me if I wanted that immediately after my mastectomy. And I was
Yeah.
like, I started to laugh because
imagine.
I mean, so that was, I said, well, let's just focus on the surgery first. You know what I'm saying? And he was like, okay, whatever you want to do.
Right, yeah.
And so that's what we did. But
Yeah.
I remember when that news, I was like, I didn't read about that. I didn't see anything in all the material that I was reading regarding this
Right.
about that. So I'm not there yet. I said, I want to stay focused
Yeah.
first. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you had the surgical procedure done, and they recommended chemo or radiation, whatever they recommend to try to remove any excess. What did you decide to do?
Well, you see so many doctors, and and each doctor is different. You have a radiologist, you have a technician, you have a surgeon, and then you have an oncologist. When I met the oncologist, I just said, can you explain chemotherapy to me? And I give him props. He really tried the best that he could, but it didn't sit well with me. I left there and I wasn't satisfied. And I was like, can I get a second opinion?
Yeah.
That was my next question.
Right.
Is it possible? Will the insurance cover a second opinion? And it did. So I went and got a second opinion. And then I met the doctor there who was very thorough, and he actually drew the breast and all the cells and everything imaginable and explained every single aspect of the breast anatomy to me. And I was like, thank you for explaining that to me. But then I was in such a, compared to my first oncologist, I was in such a almost state of the art office. Then that made me wonder. I was like, why is this so state of the art? I don't know. I'm just really, I follow my intuition, and that's really what it boiled down to. And I left there again, pleased, but also not completely fulfilled, regarding chemotherapy. But I still went and had a chemo port inserted. It's like a little pad.
So you kind of took the first step.
Yes.
Before actually getting the treatment done, you took the first step in ensuring that there was a process for it to be administered to you.
Yes, because what I read is that it would tear up my veins completely. Forget the hair loss, it's the veins.
Right.
And so they made this device that they could just stick in your chest and connect to our largest artery, which is our heart.
Yeah.
And so they inject the chemo
And
through
it
there, and
goes
it goes directly into our bloodstream.
Okay.
So I was like, ooh, that's intense.
Yeah.
But I still had it done. I was following instructions.
Yeah.
And so then I was walking around with this device in my chest all of a sudden, and having to explain to all the TSA employees, when I was travel back and forth to Saipan, there's a port in my chest, and here's my card, and you just have to explain all that sort of stuff. And it just got uncomfortable.
Right.
But then I got used to it. So that happened. And
But
then I was like, what about a third opinion?
yeah. So you got a third opinion.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. So what I did, I was under so much pressure here. And I was also really working FESPAC at that time. It was already
that's right,
2016. And I was the co-chair for the Healing Arts Committee. So we were welcoming all these natural, traditional healers from 27 island countries onto Guam. And it was between myself and Zita Pangilinan. And we were just taking care of everybody. And this is after my mastectomy. And no pain meds. That's why my mom would do the sign of the cross, and she'd be like, you need to keep still.
Yeah.
But if there's one thing I would probably say is that cancer patients need to keep as busy as possible.
Yeah.
And not stay home and, kind of sulk, in just depression and stuff. And I think that's one variable definitely that I will admit that has kept me afloat and alive, is just the busyness. So I coordinated with my sister. I was like, I need to see some doctors there. She was like, come up to Seattle. She goes, we have the best doctors here. There's alternative, therapies. And that basically meant chemo plus complementary treatments. And so I was like, okay. So I did all the paperwork in advance, emailed it. I was able to secure a primary care physician. I even applied actually for Medicaid. I was granted Medicaid because I used to be a resident of Washington and Oregon. So I was glad I was kind of still in their system.
Right.
And so when I got the green light and an appointment, that's when I left.
I see.
So I left on June 30th, 2016.
2016. Welcome back to My Story. Thank you once again for joining us in this episode with breast cancer survivor Retta Sue Hamilton. We left you with a little bit of a cliffhanger there, but don't worry, in our next episode, which will be next year, she'll explain her decision behind refusing chemotherapy and radiation therapy. And we'll even take a little field trip to the Amit Farm right here on Guam, where traditional healers continue to practice. We hope you enjoyed this episode of My Story. Until next time, I'm your host, Janella Carrera. Good night.